speaker is Shri Swaminathan Gurumurthy, Chartered Accountant, visiting faculty at IIT Bombay, Distinguished Research Professor, Legal Anthropology, Sastra University, India. May I request you, sir, to kindly come on the stage and deliver your keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, may I once again request you to kindly take your seats and maintain silence.
Founder Dharmashri Gita Parivar and Maharishi Vedavyas Pratishthan, India. You know, we are into a more serious part of the 2 days proceedings. You know, this thought has been rankling our mind for the last 1 year. You know, the world, the direction in which it is going, I don't think anyone seems to be satisfied with what is happening. I don't think any particular nation feels that the direction in which the world is going or that nation is going is the right direction for itself or for the world. But no one seems to be keen to address what has gone wrong in the last, say, 100 years or more. We thought that we should start somewhere. And those who are going to be co-opted into this must have something in their DNA. It should be a spiritual, religious, cultural, civilizational DNA which will give a new direction to the world of today. All seed thoughts begin like this. No thought is generated in a gathering of 1 million people. Thoughts generate, the smaller the gathering, the more profound, the more far-reaching, and the more accurate and more truthful the thought will be. That is why Vivekananda International Foundation began working on this concept, and the Prime Minister of India owned it. And he had a colleague in the world, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan, who resonated the same thought. And you must have seen in the inaugural session how it manifested as the joint effort of the Hindu-Buddhist civilization, initially represented by the Vivekananda International Foundation of India and the Tokyo Foundation of Japan. And what the Prime Minister spoke is virtually the keynote address, and I am going to only probably repeat it, expand on it, articulate it in my own words. But I never thought a political leader whose time is so limited and who is burdened with things which you can visualize in a country of more 1 billion people, that he could grasp such a serious and profoundly different subject from the current discourse so well and articulated. I was so surprised and I was pleasantly happy. I thought the work has started. The work has started faster and more effectively. And when I heard him, I really felt that what we have done in the last 5-6 months has begun bearing fruit. You know, this idea, conflict avoidance juxtaposed with conflict resolution, is a new dimension the world needs. See, all speakers who spoke in the inaugural session said that conflict is basically human nature. Because conflict arises out of the qualities which generate jealousy, then transform into hatred, and then it becomes conflict, to put it in very short language. And this is the work of great men, spiritualists, religious leaders, to see that this propensity to conflict is restrained. That is the purpose of any religion, any spiritual stream, any thinker, any system, any governance, that the propensity or the natural propensity of human beings to conflict must be restrained, must be controlled. But it should not be controlled with power. It should be controlled with a mass attempt at introspection. That is what is called a spiritual or religious effort. Many of us in Asia cannot understand the term religion in the sense in which it is expounded in the West. We do not have a formal religion. We do not have a formal head. We do not have an organization. We do not have an enemy. We don't have an adversary. Only if there is an adversary, you can call a spiritual system a religion. That is why there is a huge confusion in the world. We have a common name called religion. To understand two different, it is so totally different that you have to comprehend the same thing, two different things by the same word, religion, and that is the cause of most of the confusion today. And unless we are going to clear this confusion, to start with, some work has to start somewhere. Time has come to talk explicitly, of course, with compassion, with love, with understanding, to implore everyone to look at themselves and even ourselves, what we are. So it is in this sense, it is a landmark event to propound a profound concept. The concept paper gives in substance the overview of this noble concept. But it is not one of those shallow discussions about conflict avoidance or environment, because this goes on in the world. Many conferences are held where these noble ideas are discussed, that everybody is happy that good meeting has been held, and afterwards everybody disperses after passing a resolution. But no one understands whether we are discussing the root of the problem. It is the job of an intellectual, and it is his duty, and more an intellectually spiritualized. A more an intellectual tries to grasp things beyond reason. And those who transcend the current context are the people who will show lead to the world. But today, every government, every political leader, every organization is looking to satisfy the immediate needs, immediate compulsions, addressing the immediate problems. No government has more than 5 years' time in this world. And so they have to do everything within the 5 years, and what is doable within the 5 years is only what they can attempt to do. So there is no question of transcending the current context, current compulsions, and time restrictions. And so we thought that we need to generate a group, and that group can get naturally generated in a place where these thoughts have been generated for thousands of years, which has produced Buddha, which has produced Shankara, which has produced Ramanuja, and which produced, amazingly, villagers in a place called Kejrali. It is in Rajasthan, a few hundred miles from here. In the year 1730, the king of Jodhpur sent a platoon of people to cut down the trees because he wanted to renew his palace. A lady went and protested, "You can't cut the tree." And they said, "No, we have Maharaja's orders to cut the tree." She said, "You first cut me and then the tree." And she created such a big resistance, they cut her. And then her two daughters came and they cut the two daughters. 363 people, men, women and children died. Few hundred miles from here, because they would not allow the tree to be cut. No government, no law, no court of justice, no theory, no intellectual can produce this kind of reverence for nature. This reverence for nature is a consciousness which is deeper than thought, deeper than reason, deeper than intellect, deeper than discourses. So we have to create that consciousness. And unless that kind of consciousness is created, which is creatable, it is not impossible. In this world of communication, in this world of this kind of facility which is available to take the thought across to any kind of people, anywhere, without regard to distances. A man's thoughts can fly today thousands of miles in no second. So it should be possible to use all the mechanism which seems to have created problems for us into avoiding and solving the problems. That's why we chose these two concepts, two themes: conflict avoidance in the place of conflict resolution. In fact, my dear friend Dr. Balgangadhara is sitting here. I met him in Bangalore. He is a very, very rebellious intellectual, one of the most rebellious intellectuals I have come across. He told me, change it into not conflict avoidance but conflict dissolution. I thought that was even a better concept, but I don't have the intellectual sharpness to understand what he was trying to say. So I told him, you will take a separate lecture for me, how conflict dissolution is superior to conflict avoidance, because he took me to another great spiritual leader, the Kanchi Mahaswami, who lived for 100 years, one of the greatest spiritual leaders India ever produced. And he said the Hindus never wrote the history because they wanted to avoid conflicts. Because conflict reminds you, conflict is a product that you are reminded about the wrong things of the past. The history never records great things. History is a sheet of conflicts. Today's conflict, which appears in the front pages of newspapers, collectivized becomes the book of history. That is why Francis Fukuyama said in 1992, after globalization came as a tsunami and swept the world, Fukuyama said, it's over. History has ended. This is the end of conflicts. But within 3 years, conflicts remanifested. That is why you should never make a judgment on the context of the comfort of a moment which you are enjoying and make it a durable affair, not only for yourself, but also for the world. Intellectualism needs a distant look. You must be able to see 50, 60 years ahead what will happen, and not enjoy the ice cream which you are eating today and think that your summer is gone. So we need to have a very profoundly thinking, serious group. And all of us are capable of serious work, durable work, distant work with a vision. But it requires an instrument, it requires an atmosphere, it requires some initiative, it requires certain blessings from some people who from their positions of power will be able to carry this forward. So these two concepts, conflict avoidance to conflict resolution to conflict avoidance, and environmental regulation to environmental consciousness. It's a pity because I had undertaken too many responsibilities. I could not complete my paper, which I had called draft paper. It is not even a draft paper, it is a draft of draft paper because it requires corrections. In this, when I began examining these issues, ideas came like a tsunami from history, from religion, from civilization, from culture. So to put it together, the third concept which Prime Minister Narendra Modi mentioned, that is the idea of philosophy juxtaposed with the concept of ideology. Herein lies the root of all the problems. The entire world in the last 2000 years has only witnessed ideologies. Ideology is the feeling of a very normal, jealous and angry person. An angry person will be jealous of another person's wealth, another person's beauty, another person's potentials. This is the job of all religions to contain this. But if a religion itself promotes this, if a thought stream itself promotes jealousy, hatred, then that religion itself becomes an ideology. There are ideologies which are based on them versus approach, and according to me, religions which propose them versus us approach is also ideology, and it is not a religion. Because a religion has to transcend whether somebody is one's follower or not. A God cannot say, unless you are my follower, I will hate you. Then he cannot be God. Then he is only an army general. So you must transcend the limitations of a normal, jealous human being in defining a God, in presenting a God, in understanding a God, in implanting a God in people's mind. This is where the Asian race has succeeded in a measure, unprecedented in the world, and all the earth religions practiced it. Every earth religion had its own god, but it never said, my god is superior to your god, let us have a boxing match and decide, as Swami Vivekananda said. I think this language has to be articulated, and I implore all the intellectuals present here to articulate this. One of the persons from whom I learnt this in a big way, as to how religion in the sense in which West understands cannot be applied and defined to Asian religions, and that is Mr. Balagangadhara, whose book about pagan religions is an internationally worth readable piece. All pagan religions were classified as unless, discarded, dismantled, destroyed, and today the world is in search of them. In Ghana, there is a particular grove, and that grove is worshipped by a tribal set of people who do not know English. They may not even be able to write. They may not be able to converse. They don't wear your dress. They are not acceptable to you. They live 1,000 years behind you because they are unmodern, anti-modern. This is how the current modernity defines them. But they are the ones who are protecting that grove. People who do not believe in traditions, value systems, God, and the relationship between man and nature, man and tree, man and grove, man and pond, man and river, they went and told them these are all superstitious things. And those who wanted to convert them, the first sign of conversion is you must cut the tree which you worship. You know, Ghana government passed a law to ban this, because that was the only way to protect nature. Your law cannot protect nature. You know, there is a verse in the Mahabharata, in Virata Parva. Mahabharata is one of the greatest Hindu epics, in which in Virata Parva there is a sloka which says that tigers protect forests and forests protect tigers. If tigers are eliminated, forests will disappear. If forests disappear, tigers will be eliminated. Thousands of years back. Let us take the latest example. In the year 1900, India had 40,000 tigers and 42% forest coverage. Today we have 1800 tigers and 18% forest coverage. You know what we did in this period? At all times we used to hunt. You know, our kings were very sharp shooters of bow and arrow. The colonists came and gave us the gun. The tigers could not escape the competition. They could escape the competition between bow and arrow and themselves, but they could not escape the competition between gun and themselves. We shot down all these wild animals, and today our forest resources have gone. You see, it is not only man's consciousness, man's reverence for nature which protects nature. Wild animals also protect nature. This is the understanding of ecology. It is called deep ecology today. You know, ecology, the shallow ecology which is being discussed in United Nations, in the other places, it's a shallow ecology. It's not Gurumurthy who is saying this. It is Arne Ness in the year 1972. He said, what kind of ecology we are talking about? This shallow ecology. Unless you develop a deeper understanding, a deeper consciousness as to the purpose of our life, how our ancients have presented as not only a civilization, but an ecology, a discipline, a way of understanding the world, the other living beings. And unless we understand all this, your ecological understanding is going to be shallow. And there started a movement which is similar to the Asian ecological consciousness. But this ecological consciousness of societies like us is lacking in conviction today because it is not supposed to be so modern. Once you become modern, you lose this consciousness, you lose this reverence. For example, we had to construct in our own house. When we wanted to construct a house, there was in almost 2/3 of the plot, there was a neem tree. As a family, we sat together and decided that we should not cut the tree. That made us lose 1,000 square feet. This is our culture, our tradition, our value systems. That is the relationship between me and the tree. My family could never have lived in peace in that house had we cut the tree and built a bungalow over that. I have seen it in my village. In my village, they will not cut a tree. If a lady had conceived in any house, some lady or the other will always conceive, and no tree can be cut. This is the kind of discipline. And this is the restraint. This is the belief system. You hit at all this belief system, you hit at all this consciousness, you make man rational, and that is why Lynn White said in the year 1967 that these new religions which have come have destroyed this old consciousness and snapped the relationship between man and the rest of the creation, with the result there is no reverence left for nature to be protected. You know, this went right up to the United Nations. The United Nations in the year 1995 accepted that conversion of people from their native faiths directly impacts upon environment. But where is the discourse? These are all there. It is a 2000 word document printed by the United Nations in 1995. But there is so much of ignorance that unless we get beyond this, we need scholars, we need thinkers who will think of not the next 10 years, 15 years, who will think of the next generation. The attempt of Vivekananda International Foundation and Tokyo Foundation is to create this sense of robust, compassionate, spiritually oriented intellectualism which will avoid conflicts, which will ensure that environmental consciousness is created, in which, as Prime Minister Modi comprehended and told us an hour back, the most important thing is, are we ideologists or philosophers? You know, I want to read out, this is a subject which has never been discussed among scholars so far. I don't think there is any scholarly discussion. I must have visited any number of sites, seen any number of references. I have Googled. There is not a single scholarly work on ideology versus philosophy. And you know who spoke about the difference between ideology and philosophy? According to me, the most unexpected name, it was Bill Clinton, the former President of the United States of America. I will just read out, quoting him. If you have a philosophy, it generally pushes you in a certain direction or another. But like all philosophers, you want to engage in a discussion and argument. You are open to evidence, to new learning, and you are certainly open to debate the practical applications of your philosophy. Therefore, you might wind up making principled agreement with someone with a different philosophy. You may even disagree. I think I disagree with you. There is nothing wrong about it. But if I disagree, I will do something for you, is not philosophy. That is something else. The problem with ideology is that if you have got an ideology, you have already made up your mind. You know all the answers, and that makes evidence irrelevant and argument a waste of time. So you use assertion and attack. If you have a philosophy, it means you are generally inclined one way or the other, and you are open to evidence. If you have an ideology, it means everything is determined by dogma, and you are impervious to evidence. Evidence is irrelevant. You know, there has been no scholarly discussion higher than the level of Mr. Clinton on this issue. So we thought that this being the root of the matter, the world is full of ideologies. You know, ideology meant killing of millions. According to R.J. Rummel, who built a website of 30 years of research called Democide, he traced human killings of humans from the 5th century to the 20th century. And estimated some 680 million people to 1.2 billion people must have been killed. And of course, a very detailed research, not many people can question the research. He says till the 13th century, there was no mass killing in India. Mass killing started in India only in the 13th century. We all know, obviously, because that was the time India was invaded. In the rest of the world, killings continued till the end of the 20th century, and it has now taken a different form. Religion has started killing, And religious motive is the driving factor. And the latest researches, which I have included in my paper, the most critical drive for violence today is not ethnicity, it is not poverty, it is not even a personal quarrels between two great leaders which have led to wars. It is just that I don't like your religion. This has become the basis. So for all this, if you look at the UNDP study on religion in the year 2013, I was surprised to find they have listed all the factors which are to be studied as variables for understanding how violence takes place. The only word that is absent is religion, and that is the greatest drive, because you don't want to touch that subject, because it is such a subject where it is not politically correct to talk about it unless we break this kind of intellectual prohibition, and for which some initiative has to start somewhere, and there are still some bold intellectuals left in the world. And the idea of the Hindu-Buddhist conference here, and it is going to be held elsewhere, and I understand many nations, Hindu-Buddhist nations, are wanting to host this. The idea is to identify such towering intellectuals who will take on the current establishment, which is carrying on shallow debate on conflict resolution, and transform it to conflict avoidance. Conflict avoidance is a higher discipline. It is not conflict evasion. And the next is creation of a massive consciousness. And those consciousness are still there. They are dormant. We have to give legitimacy to it. They are hiding their consciousness, thinking if they demonstrate their consciousness, they will be called anti-modern, unmodern, superstitious. Who have these benchmarks to tell people? Sometime before we were told we are going to civilize you. Now we are telling our own people we will civilize you. This disease, which was a global disease, is becoming a national disease. These are all very, very necessary thoughts. And all these three ingredients put together has to create a global movement, intellectual movement. Today it is possible to transform it into a movement. Our idea is to transform this event into a movement. And I know the several subsets of what I am saying is going to be discussed with the speakers, because all of them are tuned to the concept paper, and I am extremely happy such important people like Professor Lehman, Dr. M.D. Srinivas, Kumari Nivedita. I am only mentioning the names which I can recollect, which I know. They are all tuned to this concept paper. In fact, we requested them, please express your ideas in terms and in alignment with the concept paper to strengthen this thought, to make it better, to make it readable, more readable, and it is not a place for intellectual discussions or conflicts or a debating club. We don't want it to be. We want to start a movement. We want the support of all of you. Thank you very much for your patient listening.